Good morning, class. Today I've taken up the seventh lesson of It So Happened, which is your English supplementary text for class 8. Now, without any further ado, let's begin the lesson called The Open Window. Now, like the other lessons as well, this lesson is also divided into parts. And to be precise, it has been divided into 3 parts. It's like written by Saki, whose correct name is H. Munro. Okay, his pen name is Saki. Alright, so let's begin. So it is an intro. What is it about? Frampton Newton has bad nerves. He retires to the country for cure and calls on a family friend. He meets a family friend. Now the lady being busy upstairs, her young niece refers to a family mishap with focus on the open window. So let's begin, class. Let's begin reading. Okay. Let me just zoom it down for you. So my aunt will be down presently. Mr. Newton, seen a very self-possessed young lady of 15. In the meantime, you must try and put up with me. My aunt will be down presently. Mr. Newton was said by this young self-possessed lady. Self-possessed means she looked quite calm and confident. Okay. And she also instructed Mr. Newton, to try and put up with him. To try and put up means to, engage in a conversation or something. Alright. So, Frampton Newton endeavor means put an effort or try. He endeavored to say something which should duly flatter the niece to the moment without unduly discounting the aunt that was to come. Okay. So privately he doubted more than ever whether this formal visits of succession of total strangers would do much towards helping the nerve cure which he was supposed to be undergoing. Alright. So Frampton Newton, what did he do? He tried to say something. In order to flatter the niece, he wanted to butter him up without, discounting that her aunt might be coming any moment. Privately, he as well doubted more than ever whether this formal visits of succession of total stranger would do much towards helping, towards bringing him this nerve cures. Okay. I know how it will be, his sister had said when he was preparing to migrate to his rural retreat. You will bury yourself down there and not speak to a living soul, and your nerves will be worse than ever from moping. I shall just give you letters of introduction to all the people I know there. Some of them, as far as I can remember, were quite nice. So his sister had some sort of recommendation for him wherein she gives him letters of recommendation for people she had known, and seemingly these people are nice. Okay, so to summarize what we have studied so far, Mr. Newton comes to meet someone who's a doctor and he has a bad nerve. Let's say he has some sort of nerve discomfort or disease, and he is here to find a cure. So before coming, his sister had given him some contact with the hope that these people would be nice to him. Okay, so let's continue reading on to next page number 56. It will be on your text. So Frampton wondered whether Mrs. Sappleton, the lady to whom he was presenting one of the letters of introduction, came into the nice division. So his sister had told him that some people he is going to meet will basically be nice people. But then the first person he met, by the name Mrs. Sappleton, was something he was confused whether she was nice or not. Okay, he was basically confused with Mrs. Sappleton being fit into the definition of being nice, as his sister told him. Okay. Do you know many of the people around here? Asked the niece, when she judged that they had had sufficient silence communion. Alright. So now, in order to, break the silence, the awkward silence, his niece, the doctor's niece, let's say, was striking a conversation, and she asks him, "How many people do you know here?" He says, "Hardly a soul." Means, "I don't know even a single person." Frampton said, "My sister was staying here some 4 years ago, and she gave me letters of introduction to some of the people." So he told him, okay, how he came and what had happened. He made the last statement in a tone of distinct regret. Okay, he made the statement as though he had made a mistake. It was regrettable for him. Okay, and then practically nothing about my aunt, pursued the self-possessed young lady. So she said, your sister gave you contact, which are basically 4 years older. She has never been here in recent time. So that shows you know nothing about my aunt. The child said. Okay. Only her name and address, admitted the caller. He was wondering whether Mrs. Appleton was in the married or widowed state. An undefinable something about the room seemed to suggest masculine habitation. Okay. So he was wondering about the status of Mrs. Appleton, whether she was married or widowed. Okay. But then he says, the aura in the room suggested masculine habitation. What does it mean? It suggested that the room belonged to a man. Alright. A great tragedy happened just 3 years ago. The child was relating some story. Okay. She was telling that some sort of tragedy struck aunt. What kind of tragedy would it be? Her tragedy, asked Frampton. Somehow in the restful country's spot, tragedies seem out of place. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on an October afternoon, said the niece, indicating a large French window that opened onto a lawn. Okay, so one window was vaguely open in the month of October, which is not, let's say, a fine month to keep your window open in that part of country. Okay, so it is quite warm time of the year, said Frampton, but has her window got anything to do with the tragedy? Out through that window 3 years ago to a day, her husband and her two young brothers went off for their day's shooting. They never came back, and crossing the moor to their favorite shooting ground, they were all three engulfed in treacherous piece of bog. Okay, bog refers to spongy ground, class, wherein people may get sink. Okay, it had been a dreadful wet summer, and places that were safe in other years gave way suddenly without warning. Their bodies were never recovered. That was the dreadful part of it. So this young lady told a dreadful story, isn't it? People going out for hunting but then never coming back is of course dreadful. Here the child's voice lost its self-possessed note and became flatteringly human. So now that self-possessed overconfident tone had gone and she was sounding like a human is what the writer suggests. Poor aunt always thinks that they will come back someday. They and the little brown spaniel, they and the little brown spaniel that was lost with them, and walk that they and just a second, class, and work in at the window just as they used to. So that is why the window is kept open every evening till it is quite dusk. Okay, poor dear aunt, she has often told me how they went out. Her husband with his white waterproof coat over his arm, and Ronnie, her youngest brother, singing "Bertie, why do you bound?" as he always did to tease her, because she said it got on her nerves. Do you know, sometimes on still, quiet evenings like this, I almost get a creepy feeling that they will walk in through the window. So this child had just told them a tragic story, seemingly, isn't it? What will happen? Let's find out. Okay. Now, there are basic comprehension J class. I believe you'll be able to do based on your understanding on the first part. Why was Frampton Neutral? Why had Frampton Neutral come to rural retreat? Because he had a bad nerve. He had some nerve disorder, right? Why was his sister given him letter of introduction to people living there? Because his sister had hoped that it would help him, to make things easy as he was on his way to meet Mrs. Frampton. What had happened in the Sapleton family, as narrated by the niece? According to her, they went out for hunting and then they never came back, as they got into the bog and could never recover. Even their dead bodies were never found. And all this story was narrated by the niece. We do not know how far it stands out as far as truth is concerned. Okay. And part 2, what are we going to study, class? Mrs. Sampleton comes down at last and inadvertently confirms her niece's story. Frampton tries to acquaint his host with the nature of his ailment. Through the open window, he can see things that worsen his nerves. Okay, so let's continue. She broke off with a little shoulder. It was a relief to Frampton when the aunt bustled into the room with a whirl of apologies for being late in making her appearance. Bustle means to enter here. Whirl of apologies, many apologies in quick succession. Okay. I hope Vera has been amusing you, she said. She has been very interesting, said Frampton. Okay. So they are engaged in a conversation. I hope you don't mind the open window, said Mrs. Suppleton briskly. My husband and the brothers will be home directly from shooting, and they always come in this way. So they were saying this. Okay. They've been out of the snipe in the marshes today. Okay. Means snipe refers to water bird that lives in the marshes. Okay. So they have been out hunting the snipe in the marshes. So they'll make a fine mess over my poor carpet. So like you men folk. Isn't it? So she was saying, men are known to make things dirty. And her husband and all those people had gone out for shooting. But this story and that story had some difference, isn't it? She rattled on cheerfully about the shooting and the scarcity of birds and the prospect of duck in winter. To Frampton, it was all purely horrible. He made a desperate but only partially successful effort to turn the talk on a less ghastly topic. Okay, ghastly means something that was making him scared. He was conscious that his hostess was giving him only a fragment of her attention, and her eyes were constantly straying past him to the open window and the lawn beyond. It was certainly an unfortunate coincidence that he should have paid his visit on this tragic anniversary, he was thinking. Okay. The doctors agree in ordering me complete rest, an absence of mental excitement, and avoidance of anything in nature of violent physical exercise, announced Frampton. Okay. So Frampton was disclosing his condition. He labored under the tolerably widespread delusion that total strangers and chance acquaintances, are hungry for the least detail of one's ailments and infirmities, their cause and cure. On the matter of diet, they are not so much in agreement, he continued. Okay. No, said Mrs. Sampleton in a voice which only replaced a yawn at the last moment. Then she suddenly brightened into alert attention, but to what Frampton was saying. Here they are at last, she cried, just in time for tea, and don't they look as if they were muddy up to the eyes? Okay, so those people had arrived. Alright. So now what will happen? Let's find out. So Frampton shivered slightly and turned towards the niece with a look intended to convey sympathetic comprehension. Here means understanding and showing sympathy. Alright. The child was staring out through the open window with a dazed horror in her eyes. The child also showed horror in her eyes. In a chill shock of nameless fear, Frampton swung around in his seat and looked in the same direction. In the deepening twilight, three figures were walking across the lawn towards the window. They all carried guns under the arms, and one of them, additionally burdened with a white coat, hung over his shoulder. A tired brown spaniel kept close at their heels. Noiselessly, they neared the house, and then a hoarse, very harsh, rough, young voice chanted out of the dusk, "I say, Bertie, why do you bound?" Alright, so all those things were coming true, isn't it? Now, again, we have another comprehension check wherein we are asked to solve these questions based on our understanding. What did Mrs. Appleton say about the open window? She had confirmed that her husband and her brother had gone out for hunting and then they'd be back. The horror on the girl's face made Frampton swing around in his seat. What did he see? He had seen exactly the thing he was fearing. Right? Now it's time for us to move on to the third part. What does it say? What else can Frampton do but beat a hasty retreat? Okay. Had he seen a ghost? The niece does have a knack for explaining an uncanny coincidence. Okay, let's continue and understand. So Frampton grabbed wildly at a stick and hat. The whole door, the gravel drive, and the front gate were dimly noted stages in his headlong retreat. Okay. A cyclist coming along the road had to run into the hedge to avoid imminent collision. She was not able to understand whatever was. "Here we are, my dear," said the bearer of the white mackintosh coming in through the window. "Who was there who bolted out as we came up?" So someone said, who was that who bolted out? Who was really scared or something as we were coming up? "A most extraordinary man, a Mr. Nuttall," said Mrs. Appleton. "He could only talk about his illness and dashed off without a word of goodbye or apology when you arrived. One would think he had seen a ghost." Okay, he was really very scared. Class, sympathetic comprehension refers to understanding and showing sympathy. Uncanny coincidence, unnatural. Okay, so as soon as he had seen those people, he had simply gone out of the house, really scared. Okay, "I expect it was the spaniel," said the niece calmly. "He told me he had a horror of dogs. He was once hunted into a cemetery somewhere on the banks of the Ganges by a pack of dogs and had to spend the night in a newly dug grave with the creatures snarling and grinning and forming just above him, enough to make anyone lose their nerve. Romance at short notice was her specialty." Okay? Means finding occasion to fun and enjoyment wherever possible was the specialty of the niece. So she had made story. First she had made stories that those people were dead, and then second, when the man had disappeared out, really scared. Okay, so there is a comprehension check. What does it say, class? Why did Framlin rush out wildly? What was the girl's explanation for lighting exit? Very simple. He was scared that he had seen ghost. Okay, the girl's explanation for lighting exit was that he was scared of dog or something, and then what we have studied. So more exercises. You asked to make some discussion in small group. Is this a mystery story? Give a reason for your answer. No, it's not a mystery, right? That's a funny story, you can say, wherein the child makes story which are not mystery at all. Those men had gone out for hunting and they were back. It says you are familiar with the irony of the situation in a story. Of course, the person expects something, but then something else happens. Okay. You asked to take reference of the cop and the anthem in class 7, wherein a lot of irony place, isn't it? So which situation in the open window are good example of the use of irony? So you got to find it on your own. It's quite evident and simple, isn't it? Then 3. Which phrases slash sentences in the text do you find difficult to understand? Select a few and guess the meaning of each. Rewrite a simple paraphrase for each class. This also simple. And think it over and all those exercises. So class, basically this is the conclusion of a simple yet funny story called The Open Window, which had scared Mr. Frampton Newton, who had bad nerve already, isn't it? He became so nervous on hearing this story that he had to go out. Okay, so let's conclude. Read them again, try and compose the questions. Goodbye, have a great time.